It's a whole new year. It's like a Tuesday or something like that, and it's in January. And we've got some learning we're going to do in a moment. We move on from poetry and short stories, which I'll talk about in a moment. If you check your grade online, you now have an A+ for me because third 9 weeks until Friday when we have our first quiz coming up. But if you check your grade over here, it's whatever you had way back in the second 9 weeks. Unless you are one of the handful of kids who just turned in one of the assignments or figured out what your name is, then I can get those graded and updated and try to help you from there. And some iPads you can put away, and we're good to go from that one, because I saw an iPad out, I'd get a chance to attack you. Thanks for seeing. Well, he's not that sleepy. He was able to sit. I handed back papers, so if you're one of the home dead kids, see me when you get back, and I can give you stuff from there. Looking at semester exam, I'm going to talk about that one real quick. I'm assuming you don't have questions over the poetry crossword aside from how do I write my name or from the other bits on there. Oh, if you did the extra credit thing from that Friday before, I put it onto the crossword. And so if you go check on the crossword assignment on Skyward, that's why some of your crossword grades are really high, is if you did that extra credit assignment, I just added it onto your crossword, which is why some of you guys have like 20 points on a 13-point assignment. Excuse me.
Don't you have 23 points?
Some people chose B points, but not everyone did. Semester exam, overall, kids seem to have done fairly well on the average from it. Didn't have a whole lot of kids fail it. Didn't have a lot of kids get A's on it, but I think that worked pretty well. I don't think there was anything on there you didn't know, but in case you had questions, I was putting the questions up there for you to see if you're like, what about this one? I was going to try to help you. Connor?
I was going to do this when I first down.
No, I know. I just, because it was in the past and you had issues with sickness and deadness, I just sort of let it go from here. And I figured at this time, I thought about making you do it today, but I wanted to have you in here for class instead. So you're alive now. Good job. You
Am
were
I
shocked by it. See, that was more about the short stories things. Since most of it was short stories, there wasn't a whole lot of poetry on there, except like some similes and metaphors. This one. Number 17, which was the what is ironic about this picture. That was one kid struggled on. If you only described the picture and said that there is an escalator in front of a fitness place, that's not showing me that you understand irony. That's showing me that you can describe a picture. Why is it ironic to have an escalator in front of a fitness place?
People are out, but they're being lazy.
That's what
I got
I
that one
need. You to
right.
say something about them being lazy, or it's a workout place and they're not working out. So something where it showed me that you actually put thinking into it, then I can give you all the points. But if you just describe the picture, anyone can do that. That's not what I needed. And then the last part was the nonfiction, which was definitely boring about the Civil War, but it was checking to see how well you can read boring things and learn to get you ready for iLearn, because apparently iLearn is full of boring stuff. Yay. Hi, Brian.
When is iLearn?
2 weeks.
According to him, 2 weeks.
That's what I said in this book's thing.
I believe you. We got an email this morning, and I haven't been looking at it because I think iLearn's kind of boring, and I'm not that excited about it. So
Alan's
We
super
have
boring.
an okay day off on
We
this.
should
We
just
do.
so legit.
I'm okay day.
I also have new hall passes to give to you here in a moment. So you only have one more hall pass after this. Oh, also, all of your tardies have reset in all of your classes. They are back down to 0. So hopefully you try not to use all your tardies right away.
I already have bullets.
Hall pass, I'm going to hand those out. Home children, when you come back, I'll give you your hall pass, but I'm going to pause it so you're not just listening to me walk around. That'd be awkward. But if you're wanting to cash them in, you can. Just put it on my desk at the end of class. Make sure your first and last name is on it. And then every blank line gives you the 3 points, and you should be good to go from there. Right. Then try not to lose it this 9 weeks or use them all in the first couple days. One way to flex some people.
I have 9. I have 9.
Why
did you scroll backwards?
Let's not do papers. See, that was fine.
Exactly.
So as we get into our learning stuff for today, since I did not get a chance to explain this to you before, why was I gone for that week?
Project thing.
I was working. Those of you who are on the Student Square thing and pay attention to it, I sent out information on there.
Yeah, you sent
Apparently,
photos.
I know you did.
I'm gonna
It
do
was
the
so
photo
yummy.
for beavers.
It's a SI player.
And so what it is project I started working on way back in 2020 when people were in that whole lockdown quarantine thing, and I challenged myself to create a new way to game, having grown up being a video game player. And so I created what I call a digital social gaming experience. This is a whole new way of gaming. So what it is I taught myself and built the whole website myself. And so I call it Vana, V-A-U-N-A. I'm Buddhist, and it's connected to nirvana, which is like the ultimate level of happiness. And so the idea is I was trying to create a place where people could be happy.
Fortnite.
And so on it, I have like information that explains it on the website that explains more. But essentially, what I built was it's got 4 walls like a room. But the walls are screens, and I have projectors that are in the ceiling that can project onto the walls, so I can create anything around you that I want to. And I have like a little control board area where I can control everything that shows up. And essentially, I made like a maze. I grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and so I sort of made like an area where you can go through, and it has like all these little rooms around you. This is looking down from like where the cameras are, where you have 4 walls, and each wall is going to be a different screen, and so you can sort of like go through a dungeon and explore an area. It's like an escape room, but instead of trying to go around and do things, I build the room around you to try to solve puzzles. But growing up Dungeons and Dragons, I like fighting things, and so I made it where you can go through and fight things. And I created like little dungeons you would have to go through to try and fight things, and that gives you an idea like what you see on the walls as you're trying to run through the dungeons. And you have monsters you get to fight and try to kill things that are all big and scary.
Is that AI generated?
I used a lot of AI. I taught myself how to do AI stuff. And then I realized not everyone wants to fight in dungeons, so I also created like a haunted house. You get to try to run through a haunted house, but in the haunted house, I tried to create different kinds of monsters, like little goblins and stuff like that pop out that you get a chance to fight and go against. But then not everyone wants to be a fighty person. And if you're more of a video gaming person, I set it up where you can also have, like, if you have a squad of 4 people, each person gets their own wall. So instead of like having to use headphones, you can sit and talk to each other as you play, with all 4 people playing like in the same room with your own giant wall screen that you get to play on. And so it gives you an idea of like a giant wall screen of each of you sitting next to each other while you're playing and talking.
That's so Sigma.
I also, because of Dungeons and Dragons, I do like tabletop gaming, where you have like little map there, like little figurines you move around. But then when you fight the monsters, instead of just describing it, I can put the monsters up on walls for you to fight. Then I created like a whole maze you can go through and solve puzzles as you go through the maze and try to solve puzzles. And so currently it's just in my basement as I get it beta tested to make sure it works. But my goal is this coming year, it'll be like out in an actual location you can go to and stuff like that. So
How much does it cost?
as of now, I don't have, since it's still in the beta pricing, but it'll be like you split it between like 4 to 6 people when you do it. It'll be like when you go to a escape room, it'll be like $25 to $30 a person for 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
I mean, so the idea is that you're renting it for 2 hours and you get to hang out there, but the idea is it's a thing you don't get to normally do elsewhere. Yeah.
Can I go to your basement?
Does not sound like the creepiest thing I've ever been asked, but thank you.
What is it?
You alright, Brian? You seem to be flipping. Alright. So that's what I was working on, and my goal is I've been doing it for about 4 years and was trying to just wrap it up. And I got really far with it, so I'm excited.
Is it fine? We should be your baby.
Pretty much. Right now what I'm doing is just coming up with new maps and new ideas, and I have to have people just test it to make sure it works.
We
Can we test it?
We should be your baby.
We can taste.
We all
We
want
can
to
taste
your
it.
basement too. Let's try to keep the creepy level a little bit lower on that one. I'm going to try to collect fewer kids in my basement, but I appreciate you guys offering.
You already scared me.
Oh, you guys
I'll
picked up on
go.
that?
I'll go.
I'll
give you a van.
kids in my basement. It's crazy.
Ah, so now back to learning this.
No.
So one, I mentioned earlier that we're done with one. You can put everything away except for the new piece of paper, unless there's like something you want on there. Also, I forgot this. So we're done officially learning poetry and short stories. That's the good news. The bad news is you're still in my class, and the way my class works is once I've taught you a thing, I assume you always know that thing. So, like similes, metaphors, exposition, irony are going to still be on every quiz and test moving forward. So, if you keep all of your old notes, you get to keep using them. But if you feel your head is strong and you want to throw all those things away, completely fine with me too. But
My
just
head is not strong.
be aware that even though we move forward, I'm still going to make references to all of those old things. Also, what is it we're going to be doing? 3 things over the next couple weeks. One, we're going to start into fables here in just a moment. Then, next week, we start speeches. I know, you're upset because your presentations for your inquiry project is Thursday, and you're
2
like,
to
why
3
couldn't we do
minutes.
speeches before Thursday? And the answer is, I hate you. And so I decided to wait till afterwards, and I figure we'll see how things go.
Can we just do it tomorrow?
What?
Wait,
Don't worry, your first speech is Monday. We're just not there yet. You just have to give us some time.
Monday. Next Monday? Oh, okay.
We'll get there. Don't worry about it. So,
I dive under
and then after speeches, we're going to do Greek mythology.
Thrive under.
Now, I know you guys did Egyptian mythology with Mrs. Butz. The way I do mythology is going to be a lot different because she worked more on the educating you about the boring parts of it. I get to work on the stories that go into it. And so we're going to focus more on the story bits of it. So like those of you who do play Fortnite, if you played Fortnite last year, there was a whole Greek mythology season. And so a lot of the things that I talk about this year are going to make Fortnite stuff make sense. And so we'll go through it and you're like, oh, so that's why? I'll go, uh-huh. And you'll go, and the learning stuff will happen from there. All right. But to you guys, I know I was gone for a long time. You guys forgot how this thing works again. But we're going to start with fables. So with fables, one, after years of teaching, I've realized that January and February is usually when kids want to do the least amount of work. Given, first semester, you didn't want to do a lot of work. But then when you get to the cold winter months where you get to see like hardly any sunlight, any work amount you do goes even lower. So I arranged my year where during January and February, I make you guys do the least amount of work. Because then it balances out and I don't have to make kids fail my class if I'm making you do less work. The problem is the way you do less work is by doing more speeches. Because speeches don't require you to do work at home and don't require you to read stories, but it does require us to do like a speaky thing. So don't worry, you're still going to suffer. It's just a different kind of suffering as we go through.
That's not a good thing.
And then we're also going to talk about fables, which are nice and short and stuff like that. Hi, Jaden, what's up?
You know what happened on January 2nd, right?
Yes, it was the day after the 1st. What's up, Brian?
When we do the speech,
Yes, the speeches.
when we do the speeches, do we stand or sit?
You'll find all out about this as we get into it next week.
I bet we stand.
So, one, yes, you are going to stand, but you're not going to just stand.
You're gonna put that white chair right there.
Don't make us
Cheat
stand
and
on
take
that.
away my fun.
You're gonna use that white little
That was a long time ago. Most kids can't remember last week, let alone like back in August.
What happened last week?
That
So-
what happened last week.
Before you guys complain about speeches, remember back when I started doing short stories and you complained about that. And then we read a novel and you complained about that. And then we did poetry and you complained about that. But each time we did a thing, by the time we got done, you were like, no, it wasn't awful. That's my goal. With speeches, I am not going to make you like speeches. That's just not possible. But my goal is to make speeches be not horrible and not painful. We'll see how it goes. But, do you guys know, before we get to speeches, which is next week's issue, we'll deal with fables, which is this week's issue. In theory, you all know what a fable is, because you've all had a fable read to you.
I have.
You have.
It's a
fairy tale.
Close. Little Red Riding Hood is a fairy tale.
Little Red Skibbity Hood.
It's like the one.
Three Little Pigs?
The
Also
Tooth
fairy
Fairy
tale,
is a
but
fairy
closer.
Humpty Dumpty.
Humpty Dumpty is a nursery rhyme.
Humpty Dumpty on the wall.
Wait,
Why is his name Humpty Dumpty?
So,
Bonnie and the Beast.
So, as much fun as it is having all of you yell at me, a fable is one of the reasons why I do it around this time of year. When kids
I
don't
knew
leave
it.
work,
It's
is
exciting.
that fables are short.
I know
Not
what fables are.
my idea of short, but your idea of short.
Mothman.
Fables typically go between a paragraph to the really epically long ones are like 5 paragraphs. But even those are pretty rare. Typically they're going to be between 2 to 3 paragraphs in length. Omar,
Is it slow and steady wins the race?
it is slow and steady wins the race. We're going
I
to talk
knew
about that in
it.
just a moment.
The rabbit.
So, fables were a type of story that was created where they're short. They usually have animals as the main character, and they're going to try to teach you something at the end.
It
You guys
is
know what the thing
foolish
at the
to
end is
be
called?
greedy.
I can't see it.
The dog and his reflection.
What? Close.
The main idea.
Closer.
The object.
The central idea.
The objection.
I know.
What is that bullshit?
It
Isn't it the?
starts with
It's the.
Is that an M?
Is that a
Third person.
moral.
Oh.
Yeah.
Third
That's
person
what I
also starts with an M. So it always is going to end with a moral to help you out. So let me give you a little background on why. Fables have been around for like thousands of years. So we'll go back in time, several thousand years to my childhood. And back then, we didn't have things like school. They just let kids grow up dumb. And most kids didn't make it because the dumb kids would do things like play in traffic, or hit each other in the head with a rock, or talk in the middle of class, or any number of things that would cause them to die and have horrible things happen to a child. So because of that, it caused these kids to keep dying, and there was no school to send them to make them smarter. Well, the old people in towns would see the kids going around doing dumb things, like hitting each other in the head with rocks, and they would go, "Are you hitting that kid in the head with a rock?" And they're like, "Thwack, thwack, thwack." Uh-huh. I'm like, "Don't do that." Well, the problem is, do kids want to listen to old people?
No. I
So
don't
that became
Grandma.
the issue. When the old people would walk up and try to tell the kids what to do, they would go, "Shut your yapper, old man," and they would just
That's
keep
so
on hitting
real.
each other in the head. So,
I do that to my
oh,
mom.
fine, I'll charge you the points. So eventually they came up with the idea of tricking kids into learning, and that's where fables came in. And so fables, they learned that you don't want to listen to old people, but kids were interested in a story about animals. And you could trick a kid into learning if instead of you teaching them something, you told them a story involving animals, where the animal would do a thing, and then suddenly the kid would be tricked into learning. And that was the early version of school. So as an example, this is one of the early fables. I was saying, I tried to pick one that I thought some kids may have heard of, but we'll see. So, for a moment, you're going to have to pretend that you're a stupid child. I know.
I already am.
For some of you, this is a much easier pretend than others. But for some of you, you're going to have to dig deep. For others of you, you just keep being you. And so we're going to try to help you out here. So here's how an early fable would work. The dog and his reflection. A dog who had found an old bone was hurrying home with his prize as fast as he could go. As he crossed a narrow footbridge, he happened to look down and saw himself reflected in the quiet water as if in a mirror. But the greedy dog thought he saw a real dog carrying a bone much bigger than his own. If he'd stopped to think, he would have known better. But instead of thinking, he dropped his bone and sprang at the dog in the river, only to find himself swimming for dear life to reach the shore. At last, he managed to scramble out, and as he stood sadly thinking about the good bone he had lost, he realized what a stupid dog he had been. And what we're trying to get the kids to learn, don't be greedy. Because the dog had his own bone, and then tried to steal the bigger bone, and not only lost his bone, but almost died. Again, dumb kids almost dying, so we're trying to help them become better people. So that's where fables come in. Nate?
Isn't that just natural selection?
It is. We're trying to help some kids who would be naturally selected out. We're trying to help them not play in traffic. But we'll see what we can do.
play in traffic.
Some kids are just like, but the bumpers are so shiny. And then out they go, and there's not much we can do for those kids. So, on your little handouty thing that you've obviously written your name on because you're super responsible,
Look at that name.
tomorrow we're going to pick up on our different types of
Sophia,
fables
here.
and go from there.